So I'm going to skip over some details about I've already explained the benefit of using unified democracy scores, but they're an amalgam. I mean, you can't point your finger on what UDS actually measures. It's a combination of various scores, and it reduces, and there is some efficiency because it reduces measurement error by aggregating. Okay, so there are two econometric models we want to use. And the first econometric model, and I'll read the whole model out, is I indexes countries, T indexes time. And the dependent variable, and this particular model, it's UDS, but we've done these same models for individual scores as well. So UDS subscript IT is equal to alpha UDS subscript I T minus 1. So it's a dynamic model because regime scores can be sticky, even though we are taking 5-year intervals. We're not taking annual data. Annual data, it's very sticky. Regimes are very sticky. But over 5-year periods, they may or may not be sticky, but still there is the lag dependent variable included. Plus beta 1 times openness IT, and openness is measured as a standard measure of openness, exports plus imports as a function of GDP. I mean, not function, as a ratio of GDP. I'll show you some sample means and within statistics. Then we include another variable which I haven't seen in the literature, but it solves two problems, and that is it's called closest regimes subscript IT, and closest regimes is the the capital city to capital city distance or inverse distance weighted average of the dependent variable. So in other words, it's a weighted average democracy scores of the 10 closest countries nearest country I. Okay, so this captures the concept of kind of contagion, which was first put forth informally but very picturesquely by Huntington in his second and third wave books. I mean, in his narrative about the second and third waves, contagion is a big story. So it begins with the last wave, which began in 1974, for example, started in Huntington's mind with the toppling of the dictatorship in Portugal, which then moved to Greece, which then moved to Spain, which then culturally moved to Argentina, and that started a contagion in South America. There was also a contagion in East Asia with the beginning of the Philippine democracy, which had an influence in Taiwan, although it was squelched in Myanmar, Burma, and China. Okay, so I think contagion is an important part of this story, but econometrically it also solves a spatial correlation problem. So if you have that variable or a variable like that, it has a possibility of solving spatial correlation in the errors. So we have some certain diagnostics which say that with that variable, the spatial correlation in the error goes away, and without that, the spatial correlation in the error stays. And I think that's a good contribution of our paper. I really think so, and it's a very, very strong, robust result, as you will see in the tables. In addition to that, we have fixed effects, explicit fixed effects in that regression. So that's a 2SLS, two-stage least square specification. We side by side estimate an Arellano-Bond specification, which is a dynamic specification. And the advantage of the Arellano-Bond methodology is that by differencing, it gets rid of the fixed effects. So parsimoniously. So remember, we have 100 countries. We have about 6, 7, 8 data points per country. So we want to conserve on degrees of freedom, and the Arellano-Bond methodology is motivated by this. If you have small t and large n, what explicit fixed effects do is they take away 150 degrees of freedom right off the top, and you can economize on degrees of freedom with the Arellano-Bond methodology, and they produce very different results. And we favor the A-B method, but we are reporting everything in the interest of transparency. So the big question here is, if you go back to that, what about the endogeneity between openness and regimes? So you can imagine that a dictatorship wants to not allow external influences in the country, and therefore it shuts it down. But that's reverse causality. And so there is a big endogeneity issue over here. And this is a problem which I don't think very many studies in the past have been able to solve. And what we do is we appeal to this recent AER paper by Acemoglu, Robinson, Johnson, and Yared. Pierre was supposed to be here. Is he here? No, I haven't seen him. All right. So this is an important paper, but it's a very controversial paper because it seeks to debunk modernization theory, which says that as income increases, it's pro-democratic. Growth in income is pro-democratic, and they find no relationship between income and regime scores. And they use polity and Freedom House as a dependent variable, the native scores, and the rest of the setup is exactly the same as in this paper, the econometric model. They have RA on a bond, they have two-stage least squares, all that, and they find there is no causality from implied by going from income to democracy scores. For us, that's a huge advantage. Right? I like that paper because it gives us an instrument. The reason is that income is very strongly related to openness. Gravity models, etc. They give you a theory directly relating income to openness, trade openness. And so, if you look at the econometric model, what we have is an instrument for openness, which is income, which is uncorrelated with the shocks. That's Acemoglu et al. It's strongly related with openness, and it doesn't directly come into this regression. That's Acemoglu et al. This is like the best instrument you could ever find. It solves all these problems. It's uncorrelated with shocks to the dependent variable. It doesn't directly belong in the regression. That's what Acemoglu et al. Established. And gravity models, etc., tell you that income is very strongly related to openness, but that's an open empirical question. We want the quality of this instrument to be very good too. Theoretically, it tells us we have all the reasons going forward thinking that it's going to be a great instrument. So I think that this is the biggest strength of the paper, that we've got an instrument. It's also the biggest weakness. So if you want to knock this paper, this is the way you do it, is to kill that instrument, and then I'll have to think twice about how to proceed. So here's the data. The data are at 5-year intervals between 1955 and 2000. There's over 100 countries, rich, middle, low-income countries in the sample. We've dissected the data many ways, and the basic messages that we have are what you're about to see. So I want to start with some tables.